Hello people of the internet, this is KaijuNoir here with an impromptu introduction for this episode of Shuwatch. You see, this episode was recorded a little over a month ago, where Adam and I had the opportunity to interview both Tyler Sowles and Scott Schmidt, the respective artist and writer of the comic book Durontus, as a way to help promote their Kickstarter campaign for issue 2 of Durontus. And since then, the Kickstarter campaign has become a success in the time between now and when we originally recorded that interview. So what happened was that I commissioned Tyler Sowles to actually create a title card for this episode, and once he was done, I then passed it on to Enshohma, who I have come to rely on in terms of coloring and gradient work on my title cards. And unfortunately, some things came up in Enshohma's personal life that prevented him from finishing the title card, and as a result, prevented me from releasing this episode on time. So I do want to give a big apology to Tyler, Scott, Sarah, and anyone else associated with the Durontus Kickstarter campaign for releasing this episode so late. But hopefully for you guys, you can check out the Durontus Kickstarter page or the Durontus website or the Facebook page for Killustration Studios for any further updates when it comes to the Durontus Issue 2 project itself. And without further ado, here is episode 24 of Shuwatch. Fanatics, I consider ourselves enthusiasts. I am KaijuNoir, and this is another episode of the Shuwatch podcast. Here with me, as usual, is my co-host, Adam.
Hello, YouTube.
And here, once again, we have another episode with two guests this time around. One, we have both the artist and the writer of a recent comic book that I actually reviewed, Durontus, the Lost Serpent, which is actually currently having, as of the time of this recording, a ongoing Kickstarter for issue number 2. So please give a big round of applause to Tyler Sowles and Scott Schmidt.
Hi.
Hi.
You know,
delay.
It would have been awesome. You know how it would have been awesome if we just started off like Three Stooges, where we went like, hello, 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 hello.
It would have been far more appropriate.
Who gets to be the fourth stooge, though? Who gets to be the guy that's left out?
Yeah, you know that, Andres, you do know that'd be a pain in the ass over Skype. You know?
Yeah. Like pretty much like trying to sing in sync with anyone else is just impossible over Skype because of that constant delay.
Yeah, there's like no timers or anything. Yeah.
Now, just wondering, how much experience do you guys, Tyler and Scott? How much experience have you had with Skype?
Like practically none.
Yeah, I downloaded it to start to do podcasts, and this is like the 4th one I've done. We've done.
Yep. Yeah, I think I've done maybe 5. So, yep, I mean, I've had Skype for forever and then never used it for anything.
Mm-hmm. And
then there's like Andres and I, who just use it absolutely religiously and pray to the Skype gods that it just doesn't crash and burn on us.
Right.
Yeah, because we kind of had that problem like right as we were testing out the Skype recorder to see if everything was all right. Adam accidentally dropped out of the... I'm not sure if it was he who dropped out or me who dropped out, but...
Well, according to the connection, it was me, because I pulled out the Ethernet cable.
Oops.
Smart move.
That'll do it.
Smart!
Well, there was one that Scott and I were doing where I got completely disconnected, and it was like a running gag for the rest of the podcast.
Yeah, he just fade out slowly, like he was like falling off a cliff, and then like we'd be talking about him, and then he'd come back and be like, "I heard you guys the whole time talking about me."
Oh, that has happened to me so many times on the Sons of Serizawa podcast.
Ah.
Yeah, where it's like I can just comment on, like I would be like an invisible, I'd be like a ghost on the podcast where I would still be, I'd still be typing on the chat room, and they would be reading
I'm still
out.
here, guys.
Yes,
I'm still here.
I'd just be like typing out on the little chat box so that they would be reading my messages to the audience.
And Andre says this.
Exactly, that's how it went for like almost like 10 minutes of a specific episode.
That's hilarious.
I almost feel like a robot of some sort. So like imagine if I was like Stephen Hawking. It's like, you can go fuck yourself.
That would be awesome.
So, Tyler and Scott, you guys wrote a comic together, is that right?
We
did.
We wrote a couple, but yeah, we'll talk about the giant monster one.
All right. So I guess to start right off the bat, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourselves?
Oh man, Tyler, you go first.
Okay. Let's see.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
Don't worry, not many people are
My favorite
watching.
color is brown.
Boxers,
No,
briefs.
Boxer briefs. Come on now.
Soup or salad?
Salad, for sure.
You
Now,
live in
moving on.
Michigan? You live in Michigan and you chose salad over soup? Come on, man.
Yeah, I know.
That's crazy.
It's weird. I like salad. Like, it's, yeah. I like salad a lot. Yeah, I guess, so I draw comic books. I've been drawing my whole life. I am a big Giant Monster fan. I have been ever since I was a kid. My dad introduced me to like Godzilla and Gorgo and stuff when I was probably like 5 or 6 years old, and I've been a lifelong fan ever since. I went to college to learn how to draw pretty pictures, which, you know, was a miserable failure because college and debt and all the shit that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I spent like a good 3 or 4 years trying to gain my footing in a vicious, hard industry. And I feel like, you know, in the past like 4 or 5 years, I've, you know, finally kind of come into my own doing indie books and working on stories for a lot of random people. And I love what I do. I love drawing indie comics. It's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess that's kind of what me in a nutshell.
And as for you, Scott?
Man, that's like a huge question. I guess
I was born.
right. You don't know.
West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playground is where I spend most of my days.
Well, I guess, yeah, I've always been a comics book kind of guy, you know. I kind of had like 2 phases of comic books, I guess. Like the first phase was as a kid, and it was like, you know, like Turtles and Marvel and, you know, just all that stuff, like, you know, 90s. So that's kind of, you know, I didn't really read any of them. I just looked at the pictures. So like, you know, I was one of those kids who like would draw all the time but couldn't draw for anything. So, you know, like, pictures amaze me, and that's kind of my draw for comics. And still that is to this day I can't draw for shit. So that's why I'm the writer of the books.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess because of that stuff, like, you know, movies and comics and TV and all that stuff, I had all these stories in my head. And so I went to college for English because I knew I wanted to tell stories. And it wasn't until later that I got into comics again in college that I figured out, like, the stories in my head were really the most viable as comic books. So, like, once I realized that, I sort of just been kind of full steam ahead. Most of the things that I write are generally, you know, comic book oriented or have a visual aid in mind. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's kind of where I've been going since then.
Now, why comics specifically for the two of you? Now, like, yeah, of all the different types of visual and narrative medias.
For me, I think it has a lot to do with I like storytelling in particular because when I was in college, I originally I kind of have a similar thing with Scott too. Like I was really into comics when I was little, and then got back into them again when I was in college. And like the two big things, like I wanted to do like fantasy artwork for like D&D books and like Dragon magazine and stuff like that. But just I don't know. I like the idea of sequential work and telling a story. And I remember there was one class that I took in college that was like a sequential class. So we had to do like storyboards and we did a couple mini comics and like pre-animation stuff. And I loved it. It came really natural to me. I was able to see kind of stories in my head as opposed to like just a snapshot picture. And it just sort of rolled from there. And then at the same time, I had a bunch of friends that were reading a bunch of comics, and they started giving me books to read, and it really got me back into the media. And then it was just like, oh shit, I should be doing this. Like, why didn't I do this before?
Mm-hmm. And
well, for me,
mm-hmm.
for me, I guess like one reason has to be like the turnaround. Like once you get into it and realize it, and like it's not like a video game that takes 1,000 months or whatever to do, and like how many ever people it takes to develop one of those. Like you can literally do like 2 people. I mean, you can even do 1 person with a comic book, but like as a collaborative experience, it just takes 2 people. You write a script, you draw some pictures, you color it up, throw some words on, you got a comic book. And the turnaround on that is so rewarding, where like most other entertainment mediums, they just don't have that type of reward that soon. You have to invest a lot more hours, and it takes that much longer to get it out to people. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of the reason for me.
So having a smaller crew to work on one project is a huge advantage for you guys.
It's less messy. Yeah, I like working with like 4 or less people. It's pretty nice. Communication's a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You're not stretched too thin either. Like for like the things that Scott and I do, Scott writes it, and I do the pencils and inks, and then my wife Sarah does the colors for it. So and we all know each other. I live with my wife, so we can talk about like color theory and make sure that what I'm drawing matches what she wants to color, and vice versa. So it really it just sort of pans out. And I'm lucky enough that she colors most of my stuff. So it makes my life a lot easier that she's talented too.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's it's a simpler machine. So I mean, it's just a lot easier to work with. And it still is hugely rewarding, at the end of the day.
Now, how did the 2 of you, and including Sarah as well, how did the 3 of you met each other and ended up working together?
Well, I met Sarah in college. We both went to Kendall College of Art and Design in Grand Rapids, and we were illustration majors. So we kind of hit it off in college and fell deeply and madly in love and all that garbage.
That story is adorable.
It's so gross. It's actually a really long, complicated story, but it's ridiculous. And then Scott and I met online. Was it Pencil Jack or Digital Webbing? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's penciljack.com.
Okay. Yeah, at that time I was like brand new to like the professional art field, like. Not just posting on forums and getting my stuff torn apart by people. And
yeah.
Scott was like, hey, this guy can draw pretty good. And I'm like, hey, this guy can write well. And then, I don't know, we kind of hit it off to begin with because I think that we have really similar personalities. And like when we just talk about shit, we're like, oh, that sounds so dope. And then we just like draw or write it because it sounds cool. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like we're in each other's head a lot when we work together, which has been really a blessing for the books that we do, is we kind of know what the other person wants to see, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I've always been very grateful of the internet, how you're able to just come across people you would most likely never have been able to have met in real life, or people who are like you can connect to and work on like a similar wavelength.
Oh yeah.
It's absolutely. Awesome. I mean, indie comics would not exist, I don't think, nearly as well right now as they do, if not,
No, I know, and really, that's a good point, too. Another awesome thing about doing indie comics is you can work with anybody, anywhere in the world, as long as, you can speak the same language, I guess. But, even then, there's plenty of people from all over the world.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're one of the comics you're doing is with the guy from, like, where?
The artist for my Steel Versus comics from Serbia. So
Serbia,
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, as long as there's a grasp of language and stuff, you can work with anybody, and it's kind of cool to not have that that boundary, And I feel pretty fortunate that I got to meet Scott that way because he lives in Missouri and I live in Michigan, and it's cool that we can talk to you too, and you're out in California. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and we have Adam, who is currently in New York right now.
Oh,
holy
man.
shit, we are spanning the entire U.S. right now.
Oh,
man.
yeah. Now imagine trying to do a bi-weekly podcast with 5 people from different points of the nation, be like
yikes.
New York, Tennessee, Las Vegas, San Diego.
The time zone is enough to drive you crazy.
Right? I have to look it up every time. I feel
know,
so
I'm like,
stupid. I'm like, I should know this by
3
now.
hours, but I forget which direction the 3 hours go.
Right?
Yeah.
Forget which lines the states are in.
Uh-huh. Well, and Michigan is like where we live on the west coast of Michigan. It's weird because we are really, really close to a time zone change. So between where I live in Chicago, pretty much on the west coast of Michigan, there's a time zone that changes right there. So we cross that border all the time. Especially like when we're going to G-Fest, it's super weird.
Does it ever feel like you're traveling back and forwards in time?
Yeah, a little bit. Like the first few times that it happened, it would always catch me by surprise. Like, oh shit, we're gonna be late. We're gonna be late, and it's like, oh, we got an extra hour. Okay, cool.
Now, was it more of a Great Scott moment or more of a Keanu Reeves whoa moment?
Oh, definitely Keanu Reeves moment.
Definitely a way.
Scott.
What was that, Adam?
Great. Scott.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's very it always kind of messes with your head initially, especially if you don't do the whole communicating across time zones as often as one would do so. Where it's like it's daylight, the sun's still out where I am right now, so I'm assuming it must be like nighttime where all you guys are at right now.
As a matter of fact, like I'm sitting in the dark right now, just thinking, holy shit, it got dark fast. I don't have lights on in the house. So you guys keep talking. I'll be right back.
All right. Oh boy.
Nice.
So now, you guys were just talking about how the advantages of working in the indie circuit and being able to have a lot of freedom. So I'm assuming that with mainstream comic book companies, I assume that it must be more complicated in some ways.
Oh yeah, I mean, I haven't had a whole lot of brush with them. I guess I've had a couple small run-ins, and I know quite a few guys who have have some published work. Especially some big published work, and I hear that it can be very, very complicated and very demanding.
Once you add a bottom line to something, that's when things get difficult,
Yeah, and I mean, typically it's not just. I mean, you have to work with editors, and the editors have their bosses that they've got to please, and it just kind of goes up the chain until everybody's happy. And I mean,
and be very careful. Be very careful of unions.
Yeah,
yeah.
Are there unions in the comic book industry?
I think so. I don't know.
None that I know of.
I don't know. Maybe not.
They could only color the color red. They're not allowed to do any other color.
Like the colorists, they're not allowed to talk to like the letterers. The letterers can't talk to the writers.
I mean, there is kind of stuff like that. Like there's like a weird lines of communication that you have to follow, and I guess it depends on the company.
Yeah.
And who you're working with and stuff, and how well you know them. But some of the stuff that I worked on, I had no communication with the colorist. That was just something like I did my part, and it just got moved on to somebody else. And it's just okay, bye artwork. I hope they treat you well. And that's kind of a bummer. But I much prefer
job's done.
You draw a human character, and you're like, her hair's not supposed to be green.
Yeah, I've definitely had that. And Scott, was that a Warcraft reference?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god, you play Warcraft?
Warcraft 2, right?
Yeah, it's in all the RTS ones.
All right.
I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure
this is the sound of my people right here.
We are all family here in the house of Shuwatch. So, what would you say were some of your as over the course of like the number of years that you guys have been involved in the comic book industry, be it indie or mainstream, and the people you have come across during your time working in this industry, what were some of the most memorable moments in each of your individuals' careers?
Oh shit, that's rough. Damn, I'd say I mean like one of the coolest things is like when you get your copy of your book, right? When it's all said and done and you've been working on it for however long, because I mean it could be anywhere from like I've churned out a book in a month, pretty easy, it's not a big deal. Or it's one of those things that like you're getting paid sometimes for or not at all, and you work on it for a couple years, and when it's finally done and then you get the printed copy of it and you're flipping through it and you're like, ha, I made a comic book. That to me every time was like the coolest feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine would be my Kickstarter that was successful in 2014 for my book Steel Versus, which is a Mountie versus Monsters comic book. And, it was like the only way I could get it done was do a Kickstarter. And, it was the scariest thing I've ever had to do and like the most like work I've ever had to do. And man, like just I had this app on my phone, right? And I would literally like check it every morning. And I would check it like if I woke up in the middle of the night. So, just like putting all that effort into something and to see it be a success and to like, see people excited for something that you're creating, that's a hell of a thing. So my Kickstarter was definitely the highlight of my career so far.
Mm-hmm.
It is crazy how much work goes into them. And like I've heard horror stories like you've told me, Scott, and then I've got a couple other buddies that had successful Kickstarters, and I know a couple people who've had like not successful Kickstarters, and I've just heard how much work they are, and like it to be fair, it has been a lot of work. Like we tried to get this.
Just trying to run a Patreon account.
Oh yeah,
is quite frankly a bitch.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, that's even more than Kickstarter. At least there's an end date with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's all a marketing thing too. You're basically like going out there into the world and like look at my shit. It's important. Please support me because I don't have enough money.
Yeah.
It's
pretty much.
I mean, I was actually talking to Sarah about this. It's like, because for a while I was like, it's kind of like you're begging, but it's really not. It's kind of like reshaping how like the job industry works. Because it used to be that you would go out and you would find a job, but because of things like Kickstarter and Patreon and whatever else, people can fund my artwork. They can be like, oh shit, I like this guy's work. Here is money, and then I provide them with work. It's just it's a nice. It seems like a very like a simple interaction.
Is it sort of like would you see it as more like a subscription-based service?
Yeah, exactly, and it's
similar to that.
Also,
yeah, definitely.
I think it's a nice way to hook people up so that they can do this without having to like beg. It's kind of cool because it's
you can have that opinion, or you could do what Eric Cartman did in South Park with Kickstarter and do absolutely nothing with all that money that he was given.
Yeah, no joke. Potato salad.
Oh my god!
Yeah, salad.
How much did that guy wanted? How much did that guy ask for just to make potato salad? Like $50 or something, and he ended up with like $300,000 or some ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, it was absurd.
It was something that made my stomach hurt. Yeah.
And then yes, and there was I think that guy also spawned like a number of imitators where it's like, I want to make burgers, I want to make cookies.
Yeah, no doubt.
Give me money.
Man, people were like getting to that cash cow.
Well, and I mean that's intimidating too, though, because like when you put your Kickstarter or your comic on Kickstarter, you're not the only guy there with a comic on Kickstarter, and like. When we put ours on there was like 168 comic Kickstarters up there. It was terrifying.
Yeah, and there's got to be an average of like 100 plus comics going at any given time. It has to be.
Yeah, I felt really fortunate that they like picked ours to be one of the it was like one of the like
pick
favorites
of the weeks or something.
Yeah, like a pick. Well, it was like I don't remember if it's a pick of the week or something, but they showcased it basically, I was super flattered by that. So. I thought that was really cool because it's like out of all of them up there, they picked mine and like 5 or 6 others to showcase. And I was like, oh my god!
Yeah, I figured like when it comes to like the more serious more highly ambitious projects where it's like, oh, there's a whole lot of people who are trying to make a video game or a comic book or a short film, a film of some kind. The Kickstarter kind of looks like it's some sort of survival of the fittest, and only like the best, only like the best ideas, and only like people from the most talented backgrounds survive.
I would love to think that it's like that, but I think part of me, like, I think we just got lucky. I think that there's probably a dude who, like, works for Kickstarter who's like, oh shit, I love giant monsters. I'm going to showcase this. That's kind of what I think happened. But, I mean, we do have quite a bit of talent helping us out, too, with the Kickstarter and stuff. I think our video was, like, funny and stupid, and I think people liked it for that. And
I liked your impersonation of a Titanosaurus.
I'm glad you like that. I wasn't sure what monster to be. Like, I took like a solid 15 minutes debating about monsters until Sarah yelled at me. She's like, dude, just pick a fucking monster. Like, it doesn't matter.
No, this could mean either life or death.
I know, and I had like an anxiety attack about picking the right monster. I was like, who the hell am I going to be? Who am I going to be? I can't just pick one. She's like, dude, just pick one.
Well, lucky for you, you just so happened to have picked one of my favorite kaijus from the Godzilla series. So when I saw that video, I was like, this looks worthy of my money. This guy has good taste in kaiju.
Titano's dope. I love Titano.
Hell yeah.
My favorites.
So do you think that it's possible that the Durontus Kickstarter was as successful as it's been so far? Because could it be possibly that the popularity of that Kickstarter is kind of riding off the coattails of the resurgence in popularity when it comes to giant monsters, be it the IDW Godzilla comics or the movies like Pacific Rim or Godzilla 2014?
I absolutely do. I mean, when Scott
definitely.
and I when we put out Durontus a couple of years ago, it went nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it kind of flopped. I mean, like, the reviews online and stuff were nice, and it wasn't like received poorly. It just didn't really go anywhere. And like Scott and I weren't even sure if we were going to do another issue. We had planned like a whole story arc and stuff because we're trying to be ambitious, and we're like, well, it kind of didn't go anywhere, so we'll just see what happened. And then in the past like 2 years, like ever since Pacific Rim came out and stuff, I've had a lot of people purchase it and come back to me and like, well, why isn't there a second one? I'm like, well, I didn't think anybody wanted a second one. And then it just kept snowballing, and people kept bothering me about it. And I'm like, I think that we're going to do a second one,
Yeah. What was it? I had the question. Oh, yeah.
Adam, are you flushing a toilet right now?
Am I flushing a toilet?
There's a whole lot of...
flushing a toilet.
I'm not flushing a toilet. I'm just sitting here politely listening to a conversation, and you accuse me of flushing a toilet?
I did, yeah.
He's like, no,
No.
I'm not flushing a toilet.
Taking the microphone with him into the bathroom. That's something I would. To be fair, that's something I would do.
Now,
No, what's it?
Go ahead, Adam.
I'm not doing anything, I swear.
We believe you, for now. So what led you guys to go for a Kickstarter this time around for Durontus issue number 2 as opposed to what happened with number 1, or was number 1 also crowdfunded?
No, we didn't crowdfund number 1. Really, Durontus 1 was sort of like my first like trying to be legit comic. I had did like a bunch of small stuff and like I don't know, like a couple shorts and stuff like that, and I was like, I really want to just do like a cover to cover book. So in like I think I started it in like late 2011 or like early 2012, and just kind of threw it together, basing it on everything that I knew from Giant Monster stuff. And looking back on it now, the art is definitely dated compared to what I do now. I mean, I'm really hard on myself because I've seen how much I've changed, and I think that anybody who has bought things from me in the past like 5 years can see, oh shit, he's definitely gotten much more professional and stuff like that. I mean, I don't hate it. I don't think the art is bad by any means. It's still one of the. I still think it's a good.
I mean, it's far from like the likes of Rob Liefeld.
Thank you. But yeah, we just...
I totally understand that. Like, I know there's that like classic phrase, you are your own worst critic, and I can understand what it must be like to look back on a a piece of work that you made several years ago, only to go, oh dear God, that's how I was like back then.
Yep. That's totally what professional art is like all the time. Like
Uh-huh.
even 6 months ago, even stuff I was doing 6 months ago, it's like I can't believe that I was drawing noses that way, or like I found such better, nicer ways to do this. Like I don't even like that whole book I did it all traditionally on like super shitty. I think I was using like the Canson blue line that you can get in like a pad from like Michael's or something. And it's like super toothy paper, and the pencil wants to like rub all over the place. And I was inking it with like microns, and nothing, like that was the only things that I had experience with. And like I just,
so you don't color digitally?
I do everything digital now, everything.
Oh, so
The colors were digital. Yeah, the colors were done in Photoshop, and that was
Okay.
that was my wife Sarah, and that was like one of her first big coloring things. But all of the pencils and inking is all done traditionally and then scanned in.
I see.
And nowadays I do almost everything all digital because it gives me more freedom, I think. And some people would say the opposite, but I feel like I can get a lot more loose and crazy with what I'm doing, especially with my inks, because if I fuck up and hit Control Z and everything is all better.
Yeah. Like I know, like when I started using whenever I would upgrade my new video editing software, or like do some sort of Photoshop thingamabob with whenever I'm like photoshopping certain pictures, like when I started learning like the basics of video editing and photoshopping, just Control Z just like is a dream come true.
It really is.
Yeah.
I just had to bite the bullet and get a nice tablet and really, get some decent brushes, something that mimics your thing. Oh, we lost Adam. Adam disappeared.
That's unfortunate. I'll just message him right now.
Okay.
Well, would you like to while I'm searching for Adam, would you like to give a recommendation for any other upcoming digital artists as to what kind of tablet or device they could use if they are interested in going the digital route?
It's a matter of personal opinion, because people are super super fucking opinionated about this. And so when I asked people, I was like, I'm gonna go digital. What do I do? I had it was like 40 messages on Facebook, and people like arguing on my Facebook about it, and I'm like, whoa, guys. For one, I don't want to like break the bank here. Like, I'm relatively new to this. I'm a gamer, so like there's a lot of people that insist on using a Cintiq or like a Cintiq knockoff because you're drawing and you're looking at what you're drawing, right? You know what I'm talking about if I say Cintiq?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay, a Cintiq is like if you were to take a pencil to a laptop screen. Does that make sense? So you're drawing right on the screen.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people swear by those because they feel more natural, like drawing on paper, because you're literally kind of drawing what you see. There is like a weird discrepancy because there's like a thickness of glass that kind of like basically moves your pen tool or whatever over just a little bit, which would drive me crazy. But like I play computer games and shit, so I'm used to like clicking with one hand and staring at the screen with my other one while I'm playing Diablo or whatever. And so like not looking at my hands and just looking at the screen while I draw was never a big deal for me. And if it doesn't bother you to do that, then I would totally just go and get like a Wacom. I mean, like when I bought like the medium size one because I kind of prefer like the size of it because it allows me to kind of get sloppy with my hand. But I think at Best Buy, the small size, I want to say it was like $90, and the Bamboo, which is a little bit smaller and portable, was like $75. So if you really want to like screw around with the tablet and see if it's for you, you can get away with getting something decent for less than $100. And honestly, I wouldn't go more than that because like I spent like $270 on my Intuos Pro medium size, and they've got like a large one, and I can't imagine ever using that much space. Like it's just a lot of space to draw in. So, and I mean, it's a lot of like price versus kind of what your personal preference is. But I mean, this works for me. It's not super fancy. I don't have a bunch of weird things set up on it, but I like my Intuos Pro. So,
So a question that I wanted to ask you guys earlier was, what were some of your biggest inspirations? Like, I know when I've talked to you guys and asked you guys what was it that inspired you to make comics. What I would like to ask, what were your biggest inspirations or your biggest influences when it came to perfecting your craft, be it writing, art, being writing wise or art wise?
Go ahead, Scott. I've been talking.
Let's see. Well, I guess the book that made me realize that I could put my stories that I had in my head into comic books and people be like, that's badass, was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And when that came about, I was like, full swing English major and stuff. So like when I saw all these literary characters running around busting heads and being monsters and shit, I was like, blown away. I was just head over heels, like, holy shit. And then like right as that was kind of in the thick of things, like Wizard magazine, R.I.P. Gosh, it had a contest where you could do like a pitch, and so like that was kind of basically the pitch or whatever that I ended up trying to do was something along the lines of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, So it was just like it opened my eyes to the things that you could get away with in comics and how completely genre-less comic books are. And so that was a big one. And then that led me to Hellboy, which just
changes everything.
Which, just cemented why I would want to be making comics for the rest of my life. So
Hellboy is like a religious experience, I think.
Definitely.
That's what I think too. And I mean, like, we're both like horror movie, like classic movie enthusiasts, right? I mean,
yeah,
big fan of like all the Universal monsters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the same goes for me. Like when I was in college, I started reading Invincible and Hellboy, and I was like, holy shit, I can do this. I can fucking do this. And it was
right,
like
yeah.
this, and like, well, not Hellboy. I could never do. And I'm not saying that, like, Ryan Otley's a bad artist by any means. No, it's just that, like, the way that he draws always felt similar to some of the things that I could do. And I was like, man, if I tried hard enough, someday I could get my work to look like his. And I'm still, trying to perfect that. But, like, I mean, that Invincible's a great comic, and Hellboy, I mean, it's fucking Hellboy. It's amazing. It's just a literary masterpiece.
It's religious material.
Yeah.
A very
Have
interesting...
you read? Have you read it, Andres?
I've been wanting to do so for a very long time and trying to track down a physical copy of Volume 1 at any of my local comic book shops, but unfortunately they never seem to have it. So I'm just saying screw it and go on Amazon. Funny enough, you guys both brought up Hellboy, and that was also a huge inspiration for this show's previous guest, Christopher Martinez, who worked on Night of the Fire Beast. And especially he was hugely inspired by the Mike Mignola's heavy contrasted art style in terms of like that color scheme.
And Chris's art's like that too. Like he does that.
Yeah.
He always tells me he always tells me he's like, when in doubt, black it out. Like, yep. All right, buddy.
He's like, oh, there's too much detail here. Just black it out.
Right. And when you become a master of those like figure ground relationships and stuff in art, your eye perceives a middle tone that's not even there. It's incredible. And I that's not how I draw. That's not what I'm super good at, but it's inspiring to watch people who work that way. Phil Hester does that a lot too. Like he has a lot of like spotted blacks and stuff. I think are really nice.
One question I did want to ask you, Scott, because you mentioned how you were a fan of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. What were your thoughts on the second volume, the War of the World story arc?
I mean, I liked it. It was. I liked the first arc a lot better.
Same here.
But the second one felt like a little bit more of an obvious follow up, I guess. But I mean, I think it worked within the threshold of the characters, and it also goes along with the whole theme of or that era's literary writers and masterminds like H.G. Wells and everything. So I think the War of the Worlds is a good plot and everything, but there was something a little bit more unique about the mixing bowl that they used for the first volume and how they got to where they wanted to go. I guess the second volume is maybe a little more on the nose with the literary aspects. But it's by God 10,000 times better than the movie. So
yeah. So I'm assuming you guys haven't, or you, Scott, haven't read beyond the second volume.
I've read the follow-up after that, but I've read the Black Dossier, and I've read the first installment of the small books. I forget the number, but the first one, and then the what was it, where Nemo's daughter takes over. Yeah, I've read that part too. Read that volume.
I didn't go on beyond the second volume. I mean, I own both the first and second volumes physically, but just after that ending, I just wasn't interested in reading anything afterwards. So
yeah, it's a lot. It's by no means linear, and it's pretty confusing once you get beyond volume 2, because they do it in these small little snippets, and there's like prose mixed in with it, and there's timelines and stuff. So it's nowhere near as just like, boom, here's a comic book like the first 2 volumes.
Now, have you guys heard the recent rumors that there may be a reboot of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie, quote-unquote, franchise, where they're trying to go for like an all-female cast or mostly female cast?
No, I had heard that they were talking about a reboot of some type, but I didn't hear a female cast.
If there is no Captain Nemo, I am not interested.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's or Mr. Hyde. I mean, man.
No, Captain Nemo has always been like a childhood favorite of mine ever since I watched 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And the original with James Mason, the best Captain Nemo. And so when I heard that he was in not only Mysterious Island, but also League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I'm like, must get hands on. And I had fun.
Yeah, no, that always blew my mind that Nemo was in Mysterious Island as just like an Easter egg character. That's so badass.
Let's see. Now, what made you guys eventually decide to collaborate together in terms of Durontus specifically?
Just kind of like the way that we do everything. Like, literally, Tyler's like, man, I want to do this. And I'm like, that sounds cool. Would you want to do this? And he's like, yeah, that sounds cool. Next thing you know, there's a script, and then that follows with some art, and boom, we've got a comic book.
that is almost exactly how it goes, too. Like, it's basically...
We're very machine-like.
Well, and it's very much Scott and I just, like... I don't know, just talking about stuff that sounds cool. That sounds dope. Let's just make that happen. And it goes back and forth.
Yeah.
And let's see. Now, when it came to Durontus itself, now, Tyler, was it you or Scott that came up with the? Was it you that approached Scott to write the story, or like were you the one that kind of had like the basic idea of what the story was and the concepts?
Like, I'm not super sure, because, like, I know that I came up with Durontus, like, Durontus is, like, this weird sort of, like, long time thing for me, because I came up with, like, Kaiju and stuff as a kid, and, like, I've always wanted to come up with kind of, like, everybody's got, like, their own thing, right? Like, I'm the dinosaur nerd, so I made up my own Kaiju and stuff, and, in college, I had kind of solidified this one particular one that I was like, I should make this into a book. If I ever do a giant monster book, which of course I wanted to do, I was like, I'll use this long neck thing. And I had did some concept work for it in like 2008, and that's around when I was like posting shit online, and I think that's when Scott like may have first saw that. Do you remember that at all?
The first thing I saw was like a creature that you'd posted as like the lava monster on Pencil Jack.
Oh, yep. Which was gonna be from Durontus, because at that point in time I was doing like a whole like Kaiju universe thing. That I was,
these are my monsters.
Yeah, these are my monsters. I was definitely part of. Well, I was part of that group on DeviantArt, and that's where I first met Matt Frank and like Frank Parr and those guys. And now I've known them like in person for a long time. And Scott being like the horror classic sci-fi movie geek that he is, I was talking about doing the giant monster book, and he's like, no, I totally think that would be cool. So
and just would you guys like to go over just I guess your your experiences with the giant monster subgenre of science fiction films?
Scott, you go first, because mine is pretty long.
Yeah, honestly, I had never really, like, I remember watching Godzilla and buying the VHS as a kid, and, there was a couple ones that were really, like, influential in what I later went on to create and stuff, but it wasn't, like, something that was always in the forefront of what I like, not like Tyler. Tyler's a complete fucking nut about it, so...
Thanks,
so
Scott.
me, I'm I'm a little bit, Durontus, long story short, was my first attempt at trying to write a giant monster story. So, that it's definitely, the original ones. Like my favorite probably is Godzilla versus Megalon because there was the whole tag team aspect and just reminded me of wrestling. And God, I loved that. So, that was kind of my most experience with it. And when he approached me about doing Durontus, I was like, well, hell yeah, man. I love the genre, and I'm a big fan of anything monsters in general, so I took a shot at it.
But that's also why we have, like, those pulp-style characters that are, like, the main human characters of the story. Like, Dan Krieger is, like, the quintessential, like, Doc Savage-type badass dude. And you've got kind of the eccentric scientist guy just kind of running in that pulp theme. So, I mean, we got the squeaking characters in there from your wheelhouse, too, so...
Yeah.
And then, like, my history with giant monsters is... It's just like any other kaiju fan. Like, I grew up loving it. Like,
God
my dad...
damn it.
What?
What?
No? Yes?
Did you came across some sort of life-changing realization? Aww.
Oh,
Adam's out again.
Oh, that's why he said, God damn it, okay.
Like he was able to predict that he was about to leave.
He knew he could feel it. He's like, no.
He's like the black guy in a horror film. He's like, shit.
Oh, shit. So yeah, I mean, I grew up just watching the films as a kid. My dad had seen like the a couple of the early '60s Godzilla movies in the theater, and like he distinctly remembers. I distinctly remember him telling me about seeing Gorgo in the theater, and like the first couple of movies that I had seen were, I think it was like Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster and Gorgo were like the first two that I had seen, and it was like, being like the dinosaur kid, I was like, oh shit, this is the coolest thing.
Yeah. And
then I just grew up loving them, and like before the 90s movies were released in the States, like I bought at Meijer, which is like a local like retailer, I bought the Godzilla Compendium. Do you know what book I'm talking about?
I have that book.
Yeah, I know. Mine is like all dog-eared and like it's falling apart. And I mean, like I've gone to G-Fest for like the past like 8 or 9 years. It's like I've never had JD sign it, and I think it's because I get nervous about asking him to sign it, even though like JD doesn't make me nervous. But it's because I had it when I was like 12 years old. It's become like this Bible to me. And then so that was like my first interaction with like any of the 90s movies. And then when the 90s movies came out, I religiously watched all of them. So
what would you say has been after in a way dedicating some part of yourself to the kaiju genre, the giant monster kaiju genre for so long, what would you say has been your your favorite giant monster film or favorite Godzilla film, and as well along with your favorite monster in particular that isn't Godzilla?
Well, my favorite movie is the first one. I actually prefer Godzilla King of the Monsters to Gojira by just a little bit, and it's simply because I fucking love Raymond Burr in it, and I think there's definitely a more scientific, somber tone in the Japanese version, and there's more of a horror overtone in the U.S. version, and I kind of like that weird. The narration that he does for me just raises the hair on the back of my neck. And that's like my all-time favorite giant monster movie. And that's like when I created Durontus, I was like, I want to do something like that. I want it to be kind of scary and kind of weird. And then Gorgo was probably my second favorite monster movie because I don't know. I love Gorgo. I don't know. I've just always loved that movie. And I guess in terms of like favorite monster besides Godzilla, do you want it to be Toho in particular? Because there's just so damn many.
Let's go. you can just list them off to your heart's content.
Oh, Christ. Okay, well, I love Titano. I love Biolante. Varan. I love Varan. I think that he's like, and he got popular because of the video game where they randomly made him a monster in it. But like, I always thought it was cool that Toho had Godzilla and they had Rodan and then they had Varan, which was like forgotten about. But he was like a standalone thing before Mothra. I thought that was really cool. Christ, I love so many of them. I would say that those are like my top like 3 though. So.
And Scott, do you have a particular favorite giant monster movie and or giant monster?
Well, I don't know if I'm stepping on any toes here, but because I don't think it's probably necessarily kaiju, but King Kong is a pretty big part, like of my giant monster. So, but I mean, is that bad? Is King Kong?
No.
I think it's bad. Shame on you.
How dare you speak King Kong's name on hollow ground?
King Kong, a kaiju.
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
But
no, I like.
It's not like King Kong is my favorite movie or anything.
No, but the redo that Peter Jackson did totally made me fall in love with King Kong and the story, and then I went back and watched the original, and got movie posters and stuff, and I just really love the original. And then also another aspect is a lot of video games, like the Rampage, if you've ever played that, the Nintendo game.
I grew up with that shit.
Yeah, exactly. So that's another reason why I love King Kong so much. And then the King of the Monsters games for Super Nintendo, those are a couple others that. Yeah, man.
And Atomic Guy and
Atomic
Woo.
Guy.
And the Cyber Gorilla thing.
Yeah, for King of the Monsters too. You had Super Geon, Astro Guy, and Cyber Woo.
Yeah.
And I used to play the game with my dad because you could do 2-player co-op. So we'd try to beat the game together, and he was always Atomic Guy because he thought he was hilarious.
That game is hard as hell because of that. The frantic grappling system. It's
back and forth.
You're like, ah!
I actually played it the other day on an emulator.
Dude, it's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's super great.
Dude,
and there's a snail monster named Sack Eyes. How can you go wrong with Sack Eyes?
I hate that guy. He's always throwing bubbles at you that inflate you.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on that final boss, man.
Oh shit, yeah. God,
impossible. Game Genie is the only reason I ever made it to that guy.
What's really funny is that last week, my friend Pete and I, we've been going to the swap meet quite often. I'm not sure if you guys have swap meets where you guys live.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not really.
Oh well, it's basically a flea market where people just bring their stuff and just sell it to as they're kind of like that, yeah. And it's just random stuff. Where it's this past month in August, I found a Super Nintendo, because unfortunately for me, the Nintendo 64 was my very first video game console.
Oh yeah, you're a little younger, I forgot about that.
Yeah, unfortunately I was an early 90s kid. And
Still the best time to grow up.
I'd say so, yeah. The Clinton years were pretty damn awesome.
They were pretty good.
And so I didn't grow up with Nintendo nor Super Nintendo. So back in 2012, I got myself an NES, and then this past month, I finally got myself a Super Nintendo, and I immediately got my hands on both King of the Monsters and King of the Monsters 2 for Super Nintendo, because I grew up playing those games in the arcade every once in a while growing up. And last month when my friend Pete and I, we were playing King of the Monsters 2, going co-op and just tag teaming on these monsters. It's so much easier because going through the King of the Monsters 2 in particular is just freaking hell.
Yeah,
definitely.
I remember, I never owned it, but I would religiously rent it from Blockbuster, because Blockbuster was a big deal when we were little, because it was the only way you could get movies and games and shit. And I'd make my dad play it with me, and he didn't really care. He just did it because I was like, come on, Dad, it's impossible if I do it by myself. So
yeah. Now, for all of you in the audience, you millennials out there who's too young to remember, back in our day, we had to actually walk 15 miles to purchase ourselves the chance to rent a game, or we didn't have them goddamn fling-flangled red boxes or Netflixes.
Yeah, there was no internet then, so...
No.
We could only play them for just the weekend.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
that's true. We had to play them for 2 days and give them back.
Yeah.
You're just like, no, I can't stop playing. I have to beat it. It's all I only got 3 more hours.
That's like my entire experience with Final Fantasy VI, too, which is like one of my all-time favorite
Yeah.
games.
Oh,
I'd be,
don't
like,
get me
renting
started
it
on
and
Final
re-renting
Fantasy
it.
VI. Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started on Final Fantasy VI and how frustrated I get at trying to complete this game, and then I have to give the game back, and I'm like, what the
And then somebody rented it and deleted your file, and then you have to
God.
rent it again. Yeah.
The
Then
best
you gotta
part
start
was when
all
you
over.
rent
You gotta make the same decisions again.
You got to rename all your people.
the best part's when you'd rent it and your save file would still fucking be there. That was like Christmas.
Yeah.
Like you'd get
Totally.
the game back and you're like, holy shit, it's still there.
I can't honestly.
And then finally Final Fantasy 12 came out, and I was like, finally I could save it on my PlayStation 2, and I'm golden, and I'm like, fine. I'm like, okay.
Problem solved.
Yeah. Let's see. Now, that was an awesome little tangent we got on there.
Hey, video games, man. We could talk forever about those.
Hell yeah. Now, I just remembered when you mentioned, Tyler, how much you loved Gorgo. And I remembered how Gorgo, was this creature that lived in the waters of, like, I believe Scotland in the movie.
I think it's Ireland, actually, but close enough.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I
I just watched it again. Yeah, that's the only reason I know.
Thank
Because they
you.
speak Gaelic. It's Ireland because they speak Gaelic.
Mm-hmm. Was Gorgo an inspiration? Like Gorgo's backstory somehow? Like, did you use that to incorporate it into Durontus? With it being a heavily aquatic-based monster.
I mean, they all were, right? I mean, you look at
True, yeah.
Look at Gamera and Godzilla and Gorgo and the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and the Giant Behemoth.
Uh-huh.
Like, those were the movies that when I was like, fuck, I want to do like a giant dinosaur. Like, those were like the 5 movies. Like, the Giant Behemoth in particular is kind of what influenced the long neck and stuff like that. That and Nessie.
Okay.
But, like, I kind of wanted to do, like, I made Durontus from Norway, because, I always liked the idea with Gorgo and Godzilla in particular, like, the whole, like, mythos, right? Like, there's the Japanese mythos of, like, all the dragons and stuff like that, and, like, aquatic monsters, and, Ireland has the same thing. I'm like, well, what other culture has this really rich, like, folklore with, like, sea monsters and shit? And I was like, oh, shit, Norway. We could totally take, like, a Viking route and make him, like, a Norwegian monster. And to be fair, like, if we, depending on how issue 2 goes, we're going to start, like, issue 2 is going to wrap up the story that we've got going on now. And then, Kickstarter's going really well, so I'm kind of pleased with that. And if everything continues to be moving in this direction, then we're thinking about doing another storyline where it's going to be like possibly like a split storyline where part of it takes place in the past and part of it takes place in the present, and there's going to be like this whole like Vikings versus Durontus storyline.
Are you guys going to pull a Lost and make it completely overly complicated?
I don't know that we're
Yes.
capable of making it complicated. I'm not, anyhow. Scott,
No, I mean, no, I don't think it's going to be that bad.
And like Durontus dies, and then he gets like taken over by the devil or some shit like that.
and it turns out Durontus is actually some woman named Sue the whole time.
As in Mary Sue?
No, just a woman named Sue.
Ah.
Just
Just because.
it ends with everybody, all the characters surrounding her and clapping and saying congratulations.
No.
Spoiler alert.
And then everybody died.
And then everyone dies. The end.
So you mentioned before how you based Durontus, or when Durontus was inspired by a lot of those aquatic dinosaur type of monsters. Where did the idea for the spine came from?
Well, I was trying to come up with something that would be like immediately recognizable, right? Like I feel like I spent so much time trying to figure out a design for him. It's ridiculous. Like Godzilla has those really iconic dorsal spine things going on, his fins, whatever. And I feel like when you have a kaiju that doesn't have something really cool and iconic like that, it's losing just a little bit of that like flair. Like when you think about people's favorite dinosaurs, they usually have some sort of really like remarkable feature. You know,
Yeah,
like whether
that's
it's a
true.
horn, a horn or a frill, or even like when you think about like dragons and stuff, they always have some really awesome sweeping horns or badass wings or something. And I had seen, I don't remember where I was. I actually think I was at a library, which is super weird because I don't go to libraries like ever. But I was like flipping through like a book about dinosaurs or something because I apparently have no life. And there was a really cool picture of like a Spinosaurus, and the way that they had rendered the spines, they were kind of like broken looking and kind of like frayed. And I thought, oh, that'd be a really cool way to do it if I made them kind of look like they were like eaten apart and like huge and kind of broken looking. That would be kind of cool. And it kind of goes with the whole aquatic thing too. Like I know that like obviously like a Spinosaurus and like a Dimetrodon or whatever don't really seem overly aquatic, but when you think about like big frills and fins and stuff, it reminds me of like fish and eels. And like a lot of where I took inspiration for like Durontus's face and neck and stuff comes from eels. So
because when I've noticed like your more recent depictions of Durontus, I would notice like a bit of like a moray eel type of influence there.
Yeah, for sure. And like so old Durontus was like when I first came up with that like a few years ago, I was really designing him like sometimes I feel like some of my ideas that I had were totally snatched up by Hollywood without like they beat me to the punch. Like fuck, I totally thought of that. They totally beat me to it. But like I wanted to design him so it looked like there was a guy in a suit, right? Totally what they did with Pacific Rim. Like, they designed all their kaiju around, like, they had to look like there was a guy that could fit inside there. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with Durontus, is make it look like, even though, he's going to be performing things that a guy in a suit can't do because it's a comic book, but make it look like a guy could fit in there because kaiju movies. So.
Well, for the record, if I was to ever make a movie with a T-Rex in it, I wouldn't have it look like the one from Jurassic Park. I'd make it look like the one from King Kong.
Where it's like standing perfectly erect, basically.
Yep.
The old-fashioned tripod stance.
Yeah, because that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like all the dinosaur toys I had when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I was to ever... I really want to remake one day. I want to remake the movie that Will O'Brien wanted to make called Creation, which was what led to King Kong. And if I was to do that, I would make all the dinosaurs like we thought they were back in the 1930s.
That would be awesome.
Yeah,
it'd be amazing. It'd be a lot of fun, and scientists would be like, ah!
I do kind of like pissing off scientists. That is...
T-Rexes those dinosaurs are supposed to have feathers!
Oh, I know. Yeah. I think Jurassic Park handled it well, though.
No, they're not. In my imagination, they're still scaly fuckers.
Right, yeah.
Like, they do have scales. In my imagination, try to beat that, science!
In my mindscape, they can never take it away.
Unless, science decides to create robots that just, drain your imagination away.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh. So the iPhone.
Oh, no. I remember, I made a comment, in my review of Durontus, where I pointed out the wrinkly skin of Durontus.
Oh,
and you mentioned how you had an explanation for that, or you had a comment to say about the skin texture.
Do. So, and again, the idea for it came from Godzilla, and have you heard why Godzilla's skin is the way it is?
Yeah, because it's supposed to have this deformed, burnt look to it.
Right. Yeah, and I kind of wanted to do something like that with Durontus, and so the Gargantua in Durontus's world are basically getting chemically transformed by this weird chemical that's found throughout the planet, buried in the planet, and I don't know if Scott and I have decided that if it's going to be from meteor impacts or whatever, we think we might be extraterrestrial in origin. We haven't gone that far with it.
Is it like Ninja Turtles green ooze that just it's like a basic plot device that you can use to spring forth any villain off the top of your head?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I like it better than the Godzilla concept of, there's just a giant dinosaur. Like Titano. It's a dinosaur. A giant dinosaur. Of course it is. So, like, when whatever original monster or dinosaur or whatever was originally affected by this chemical was, like, horribly, like, mutated and burned kind of in, like, a Freddy Krueger style all over its body. And it also bleached its skin and made it, like, a whitish color.
Oh, okay.
So that's why Durontus is kind of white and why his skin is kind of weird and wrinkly and, yeah.
Okay. I really enjoyed, like, the white text. I feel like that white colorization definitely helps him stand out a lot from the other monsters, where they try to go for, like, very, I don't know, bright, vibrant colors or very dark, muddy colors. Here it's like something that's very, I don't see that many white monsters.
You should have seen my face, though, when we went to Jurassic World and Indominus was white.
Oh.
I was like, damn it, that's my thing!
Like, damn you, Spielberg!
I'm always behind on this shit. Someone else thinks of it like the same time I think of it, and then, you know, because I'm just a dude, like, I only have so many connections, you know?
Yeah.
But it's cool, keep on trucking.
I suppose you created the moth creatures only to figure out Mothra was a thing.
What am Mothra?
Well, actually, Mothra was the thing. Thank you very much.
I see what you did. No, yeah, we did the Moths as a complete direct homage to Mothra.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we
really,
just kind of wanted to get a couple things out of the way.
Because I could have sworn it was Megaguirus.
Well, it is definitely Megaguirus, like, in the whole Swarm thing, too. That's very true.
And I just got done reviewing The Swarm, and that movie is a piece of shit.
Not the bees!
That's what I was saying the entire fucking movie.
Although now, like, I'm flipping through the Durontus book right now. I'm just on the page where Durontus is just covered in the moth like by that swarm of moths, and now all I'm thinking is right now is just Nic Cage's voice coming out of Durontus from the Wicker Man remake.
Oh, no, not the base!
Not the bees! Oh, it's in my eyes! It's in my eyes!
We would sell so much more of that comic if there was, like, Nic Cage audio that came with it. Like, if we could package them together and be like, here, this comes with free Nic Cage audio.
What do you call it? Like, you just have a picture of you have a certain.
I'd buy groceries with Nic Cage audio.
you just have, like, hired Nic Cage to just record, like, your grocery list. It's like 4 apples, a box of Oreos.
A box of Oreos.
2 gallons of milk.
2 milk.
No, you have to have a sequence, like, if you're gonna have, like, Nic Cage reads Durontus number 2. You're gonna have.
We could probably afford Nic Cage at this point.
Yeah, have you seen Left Behind?
I have not seen Left Behind, but
good, but just know that if he does Left Behind, he's willing to do anything.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we should hit him up, Scott.
He wasn't.
Yeah, Scott, you know Cage, right?
Well, you know.
He wasn't willing to do Nymphomaniac, so I guess he does have some morals.
Oh, okay.
Now now you're making me think I've just seen Lars von Trier trying to direct Shia LaBeouf opposite Nic Cage.
Everyone would see that movie.
Yes.
It'd be a lot of yelling.
I just want to see the magical team reunited, Nicolas Cage and John Travolta.
Oh, face off.
Maybe throw in some Tim Allen and some Bill Cosby and see what happens.
Like Bill Cosby, like,
does this rag smell like chloroform to you?
Oh, Nic Cage, I want you to drink this cappuccino. And Nic Cage
Read the answer and lick on my pudding pop.
How many roofies do you think it would take to take down Nic Cage? Because I don't think there's enough roofies.
I don't know, man.
I honestly don't think Nic Cage is capable of getting drunk anymore. I think he's just naturally.
I know, like.
Yeah.
I
actually think Nicolas Cage has ascended the level of humanity that we know, and has become, in some ways, a god.
Is he like
He's an X-File.
Always a god.
Well, I guess he was casted as Superman for a reason back in the 90s.
That's very true.
That was the beginning of his transcendence.
Like, when you look at those, like, old, like, production pictures of him in the suit, he's, like, kind of like, he looks like he's falling asleep, but no, that's just actually him going through the transcendence.
Yeah, that's what the moment is called. Whenever we refer to the transcendence, we're referring to Nic Cage.
Yes. So I guess back on the comic, I did want to ask, what made you decide to want to go for the Mothra homage, and what led to you choosing like a similar color palette in terms of like the primary white color for these pseudo Mothras?
Well,
I think for the most part, just the idea of like I didn't want a one-on-one monster battle. I just I didn't want to write that. I just didn't think that would be fun or interesting to write or see on the page. So I thought it'd be more interesting if he had something to face off against, which was a non-conventional kaiju opponent, you know. So, and for the whole color and stuff is just sort of derived from them being, I guess, Arctic based or cold based in how they function and attack.
Now, do these moths actually have a name?
Yeah, they're called the Algatera. I'm pretty sure I did like a random Google search and figured out a bunch of word combos one day while writing it. I couldn't tell you what it was now, but that's what they're called.
We'll get in. We're actually going to get into like their origin and like kind of their purpose and stuff in the second issue.
Yeah,
that gets all.
They're made by Atlanteans.
Yep, they're made by Atlanteans.
Scientifically engineered by them.
I just watched. Revenge of Iris today, and they're one of the Guardians. They've got to be one of the Guardians that they never ended up talking about in the movie.
Oh yeah, true.
You know what I'm talking about? How there's like the Guardians of like each cardinal direction.
Yeah,
and they talk about like how Iris is one and Gamma is one, and they kind of like make it seem like Gauss is one, and then there's one that they never talk about. So who the fuck is that? It's got to be these moths.
Yeah, it's true. Like, well, wait, let's see. What were the animals? It was a turtle, a phoenix, a tiger.
It's the tiger, really. It would be the tiger because the phoenix I think is supposed to be Iris.
Right. But then what was that fourth one?
It's like a snake or something. Wasn't it?
That sounds right, I believe. Because I remember like Matt Frank, he was like experimenting with that idea where he came up with his own guardian beast for, I believe, like a snake and tiger, and he ended up. He made like one tiger-based one. He made another snake-ish one because it was kind of like his take on Barugan.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. Let's see now. Oh, there was one thing that caught my eye when I was initially reading Durontus, and it was I noticed that there was this kind of little subplot, or not so much a subplot, but just like a character moment between Hansen and Emma was talking about having to go back to taking classes again in order for her to, for the scientific community to take her seriously. I just thought, was this ever inspired by your guys' experiences with education?
That's on you, Scotty.
Well, I guess the idea was kind of where that came from was the idea that these members of the GWG are, they're sort of humanitarians in the way that they're going about it, and why they're out there. And I guess...
There's that toilet in there.
I guess I'm wrong. But
I think maybe Durontus is attacking New York.
But it has more to do with just like doing something like following a giant monster, sort of poking fun at the idea of them being scientists about this giant monster, and then. But with the idea of more is that, like, that it's a real creature and that they're trying to learn, how they work and how they function in their place in the whole biosphere and everything like that. So that's kind of where that was coming from.
I like how they're just, like, regular people. They're just, like, they're just pretty regular people.
Yeah. And the idea of like having an organization that follows Durontus and like studies these giant monster phenomenons was that where did that idea came from?
Well, I know it seems like it came from that animated show, but I've never seen that show, the Godzilla show. But it's honestly just a vehicle to be able to insert human characters and relatable characters into a giant monster story. Is honestly what otherwise you'd have, sort of like I guess like the Godzilla in Hell series right now, you know, he's just like walking along destroying shit, and there's no text and no lettering whatsoever because there's no one to talk. So
Granted, it is super, super dope.
oh, it's super dope, no doubt.
Yeah, I don't
One of
think
those fucking stories that they took from me. Like, I totally thought of that years ago. Because I'm like, I come from like kind of a metalhead background. Like, I like Hell. Hell is cool. And like, in college,
Hail Satan.
Yeah, Hail Satan, all that. When I was in college, I was really big into Gwar, and they released Beyond Hell. And basically, like, Gwar goes to hell and beats the shit out of Satan, and they take his throne, is kind of the premise of the album. And I actually thought at that time, I was like, it'd be so cool if Godzilla, like, went to hell and, like, fought Satan. And I know that they were supposed to, there was going to be, like, a Godzilla versus the Devil movie that, like, never happened. So I'm kind of hoping that's kind of where they end up with Godzilla in hell, is, like, maybe he actually, like, Satan's a giant monster and Godzilla has to fight him or something.
Another thing. When we were talking about Durontus, and we were talking about like the different aspects of his design, and I noticed that when looking at the concept art for the Durontus 2 Kickstarter, I noticed that you did quite a redesign on Durontus. I would like to know what were some of the influences or reasons. Or the ideas that inspired you to create this like Durontus 2.0.
Well, there's honestly a lot of stuff that goes into it. I think a really big portion is like I am a lot better of an artist now than I was then. I think that I can better convey what I was trying to do then and do it better now. You know, and trying to stay like modern, trying to stay relevant, like with the new kaiju movies. I kind of wanted to hit on that feel, especially like especially the last year's Godzilla movie and stuff, kind of that modern take on old monsters. And you know, like I'm not even worried that it's not that he's going to look a little different, because of, you know, the part of the whole thing with kaiju movies that we all know about is each monster undergoes like this Doctor Who style transformation every so many years, and it looks completely fucking different, but we all just go, okay, and watch it anyhow. And like I had talked to Scott about it, because he's like, well, should I like write it into the story that he like mutated or something? And I'm like, fuck no, it's a giant monster book. Like, there's no explanation necessary. He just looks cooler now.
Almost like a Bill O'Reilly moment. Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck it, we'll do it live. So I really a lot of stuff that I wanted to do with Durontus in the first book that I don't feel like I quite nailed down. I mean, I was happy with it at the time, but a lot has changed since then, and I revisiting it, I feel like I owe him an update, and you know, I want to make it cooler and more exciting for, you know, the people that are going to want to pick it up, which, you know, isn't just like kaiju fanatics anymore, because you've got the new movies and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of people that are into it now that weren't, you know, 2 years ago. So I want to make sure that those people are going to see it and go, oh, that's really cool. I want to read this book.
And I'm wondering if somehow, for the people that you've got who are working on official Durontus art for the Kickstarter, I'm wondering if they're using like Durontus 1.0 as like a reference, and only when they see your redesign, they're like, fuck, I have to start all over again.
Well, I mean, the good news is I had a lot of that stuff nailed down. When they were like working on posters and stuff like that, they're like, where can I find reference material? And I'm like, go here. And I basically sent them to the website.
Yeah.
I had most of the stuff on there. I'm not sure that every one of them has read the original book, to be honest with you. I think most of them have. But yeah, so I think that a lot of them are, you know, pulling references from the new stuff.
And have you redesigned Durontus? You mentioned how Durontus was an idea that you've had for a long time now, and have you redesigned him before publishing the first issue?
I mean, yes and no, because like, so did you happen to see that one really terrible drawing I posted from college?
Maybe.
Okay, it's like a long neck Durontus looking monster fighting a bug monster thing.
Oh, was it the blue monster Durontus Attacks?
No, that was. Well, that's another thing entirely too. I mean, I went back and I had found like the first sort of like like Durontus in his like infantile form, I guess. I was just doodling in a sketchbook when I was in college, and it's just like a long neck dinosaur, and I think that's kind of what planted the seed for Durontus later on. And then the first thing that I did for Durontus, I did like a 4-page short, and it's before I met Scott, and it was where he's fighting that blue monster that you're talking about. He's fighting this like alien monster called Maguju.
I like that name.
I think if memory serves, it's a portmanteau for ugly monster in Japanese.
Interesting.
So yeah, and it was just like that was one of the first comic things I ever did, and it was short, and it wasn't, it was just sort of like, I guess I can do this sort of thing. So I've drawn him enough since then, and that was like 2008 maybe, maybe 2007. So I've drawn him so many times that each time I draw him, he's a little bit different because I draw so much, and style changes.
I also guess it's just like that idea where it's like Durontus, like whatever like beta prototype version of Durontus was like a single idea that just developed over time as you came up with more and more ideas as to define it and like try to make it like unique.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly what it's like.
One thing about that, like actually the whole Lost Serpent moniker, that actually didn't come about until after we were basically done with the script. We were done with most of the art, at least the pencils and the inks for number 1, and then we kind of just whole idea of the serpent and a different backstory came along, and then and that's kind of where the evolution of how he looks kind of came about, was going along with that subtitle that we'd introduced to tie into his history. So that's kind of what's weird and magical about an indie book, is you kind of just you're doing it and you're making it and you're committed to it, but it's still changing as it goes along and still getting
really
a little better.
Yeah, it's really malleable. Especially when it's your own book. Like Scott and I can change things pretty much whenever. It's nice. It's nice to have that creative freedom. But I mean, like, even guys who are working for like big publishing companies, it's insane to see how much they've changed over the years. Like Ryan Stegman is kind of a friend, and he did Spectacular Spider-Man, and I think he's drawn. He did some stuff on Inhumans and like Wolverine, but it's insane to me to see what he used to draw like in 2010 versus how he draws now, and it's completely different. I mean, it's really awesome how much he's loosened up, and I mean his style, it's awesome. So I mean, it's consistency is one of those things. Like as you grow as an artist, it's never going to be the same, because like whenever you start changing how you render things, how you draw stuff, how you see stuff in your head, it just changes over time.
So. Now, let's see. One question. I know I definitely made that mistake in my review where I mentioned that Durontus was a 2014 comic, even though it was 2013, and I should have known, considering it says 2013 right on the cover itself.
It's cool.
I was confused because I looked online, I've noticed like certain places where you can purchase the comic said it was, the digital release or like the online release was 2014. So when exactly did the comic go on sale?
Like the first one was in 2013. So, and that was ours, like just our self-publishing, printing. It takes time to get stuff published, like through Comixology and stuff like that. It can take anywhere from like a month or 2 to like 6 months. And I think that I had a couple edits that I had to change because I had some like low res pages that I didn't know about that we had to like re-letter and stuff. So like it added an additional 2 months onto it. So, that's why there's a discrepancy between like last year and 2 years ago.
And what were some of the biggest things that you learned from this experience with issue number 1?
Oh man, like the big thing is like, like, I don't want this to be harsh, but like I've had a lot more support from like indie comics, like people in indie comics groups than I have had from kaiju fans, and that really surprises me. And like I think it's just because like as a group they're very like they're wary of like new stuff. Like the new things are kind of, they're in love with the classics. They like the things that they know. They especially are really they hold true to things that are like Japanese in origin. And so when they hear about like a brand new American indie book, they're like, meh,
Mm-hmm.
And like, from my
I'm
perspective,
too good to read something made in America.
yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know that that's it. I just think that they're kind of in their comfort zone. Like, I feel like a lot of like kaiju fans have this comfort bubble of the things that
No,
they know.
unfortunately, that's what I just said is very much so present in the kaiju community.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of lost touch with the kaiju community.
Oh,
like,
me too. Me
I mean,
too.
But like, I think I was really surprised because the first book didn't really go anywhere, and I brought it to G-Fest, and I had been talking about it the year prior, and like was doing my absolute best to have people be interested, because from my perspective, if I would have saw that, like, say if in a different world Tyler never drew anything but has always still been a fan of giant monsters, and I came to a show and I saw like this really cool indie book that's got a different giant monster in it, I would like snatch that up in a heartbeat. Like, that would be like, oh shit, that's so cool. But that didn't happen, and I mean, which is why it's kind of refreshing and surprising that the Kickstarter is going so well, because a lot of people have been very, very supportive. Because like I was really afraid to do a Kickstarter. I was terrified that we weren't going to be able to make our goal, and like, we made it in 4 days, and we still have half a month to go and work on stretch goals and stuff. But it's cool to know that there is a support group out there. I just was kind of surprised at where it came from.
I guess maybe it was just one of those things where your comic just so happened to have been noticed at the right time and place.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, I think that maybe, like with the way that Durontus came out, that people were just not ready for it. They didn't want to accept it. And, it being a single issue too is, I feel like a lot of people want more than one issue at a time. So, coming back with a second issue kind of solidifies the reality of the first one.
And I've noticed now, like, in the last, I want to say 2 or 3 years, we've had other people coming out with their own independent giant monster related comic books, be it James Biggie's Robot Gatakomatsu, or Chris Martinez's Night of the Fire Beast, or Josh Finney's World War Kaiju. And so all of these creators are coming up with their own books roughly around the same time. You think that's also kind of a thing where it's like people are starting to notice now, or like kaiju fans are starting to notice these independent giant monster creators?
I think so, and I think it has a lot to do with like the confidence of the industry, because like, I don't know, like, being a nerd now isn't shameful. Like, growing up liking video games and comics and like dinosaurs was kind of a thing that you didn't go out and immediately tell girls. or it wasn't a bragging right thing. And nowadays being a nerd is a very acceptable thing, and like there's a whole lot of nerd pride that goes on. And I mean, you saw it with zombies, you saw it with vampires, you saw it with wizards. I mean, like, D&D is huge.
Wizards.
Yeah, I know. Well, Harry fucking Potter, man. Like, there's a lot of like deeply nerdy things that are now that are huge in mainstream, and I think that kaiju is another one of those ones that's kind of, it's no longer something that you hide. It's something that you can be proud of, that you like, and it's cool if you like dinosaurs. Don't hate, and so I feel like a lot of people now are like, they're not as intimidated about doing what they really like to do and sharing what they can do with the world.
And speaking of that nerd pride, I did want to bring this up. When did you start going to G-Fest? And was it G-Fest that got you into that circle of like that got you into like circle of independent creator supports? Or was it more along the lines of just like online stuff that then kind of evolved through G-Fest?
G-Fest was the first convention I ever did, and it was the first one that I ever bought a table at. And I think it was, if memory serves, it was 2008, and it was Matt Frank's first show too. And it was like him and me and like Frank Parr. And we were like the only people, and we were stuck in a corner of a room. It was his first show. It was my first show. And so
there wasn't an artist alley back then.
Not really. I mean, there was like an artist corner type thing. And it was before Matt had done any comics or anything, and like before I had done any comics. And so that was the first show, and that for me, because it was like a comfort zone. Like, it was my second year at G-Fest. I had just gone the first year to go. And that was kind of the first introduction of, because I made money that weekend. I was like, oh shit, if I can make money doing art, I should start checking out other shows. And then there's like this like 2 or 3 year period where I kept going to shows, and it was like me against the world, and I didn't have a whole lot of friends. And then all of a sudden I met a bunch of people in Michigan that were really supportive. I met Scott around that time. then from that on, I just kept, going from convention to convention and meeting people online and stuff. I've made a lot of friends. And then, going back to G-Fest now, I've got a lot of friends there. Mm-hmm. So I'd say that, yeah, G-Fest was the start of it. Not necessarily in terms of, indie comics, but it was basically, the start of my entire, semi-professional artistic career.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I suppose, knowing more people who are in the industry certainly helps your career a lot, I'm assuming.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely does. Because that's the big thing is, especially when I first started, it is a very, dog-eat-dog thing, and, every other artist out there is your competitor. Mm-hmm. But the minute that you get over that mindset is the minute that everything changes for the better. The minute that you see them as allies and not as, they're better than me or I'm better than them or they're doing this book and I'm not doing this book, the minute you can get over that shit, it's so much easier to move on. It's so much better to have friends who support what you do. Because, even this Kickstarter, all I had to do was just, ask people, hey, I'm doing a Kickstarter. Do you want to do something for me? And they're like, sure, what can I help with? And my buddies are just donating because they just want to be nice. I asked Matt Frank, I'm like, dude, you're kind of the king of kaiju right now. Can you draw me something for it? And he's like, yeah, no problem. Because I've known him for forever, and it's cool to have that sort of support from people. Mm-hmm. Rather than trying to stick it out alone.
Would you say you can boast about how you knew Matt Frank before he was cool?
I suppose I could boast about it. I won't.
And I was just wondering, Scott, have you ever been to G-Fest before?
No, I haven't. I was supposed to, but it didn't.
Yeah, Scott, what the hell?
Stars did not align for me to head out that way. It was a bummer.
I'm hoping you were not like our idiotic friend David, where he just spent most of his money on DVDs and bootlegs as opposed to saving money for the trip.
I don't quite remember what it was. It was financial, no doubt, that I couldn't go.
It had to do with getting a house and moving and all that shit.
Yeah.
You had a good legitimate reason.
Yeah, definitely. I got a good doctor's note, no doubt.
Have you had any experience with other conventions?
I've only actually tabled at one, and I've been to my fair share of them, no doubt. But yeah, the writing aspect is much more different when it comes to getting tables and being at a show. Mm-hmm. You have to have you have to have a finished product, a finished book. You can't just do prints and stuff I mean, you could, but it would be weird to sit down if I was like, hey, I have all these prints to sell, and I didn't do anything for any of them.
You should just write prose on a poster size and put it up.
These are words
I wrote
that
you a short story. These are words that I like.
I drew a title. I drew/wrote a title.
Right. This is the comic book that I wrote and designed when I was in 5th grade. You can get your copy here. But no, I've got some books on Comixology, my main series, and then I've got a couple print books that are coming out in the form of anthologies that I'm hopefully going to start taking to a good amount of shows pretty much early next year. Next year is hopefully my breakout year to go to a consistent amount of shows.
You've got a ton of shit that you got to get out there, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of short, and they're short stories, which is kind of another thing that makes it difficult, because, you need to bundle them all together, and because, no one's going to buy a 6-page comic and be like, oh, yeah, totally, this is awesome, so,
Now, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, I was finished.
All right. Well, let's see. Adam, do you have any questions? Because I think we're very close to wrapping up.
Considering the fact that I haven't cut out for a while,
the moment he has a question, that's when he cuts out again.
No.
Well, let's see. I guess we can start before we get to our very end. Is there anything that you, Scott or Tyler, would like to pimp out, or is there anything stuff that's going out that's on sale right now that you would like people to know about? And if so, would you is there something like a little pitch it to our audience?
All right, Scott, you go first because I got a couple, but you go ahead.
All right. Well, my main thing is I wrote and write and create a comic called Steel Versus, which is the legendary adventures of Sam Steele, Northwest Mounted Police. The hashtag that I throw around with it is Monsters versus Mounties. So That book, you can get 2 issues of it on Comixology. So all you got to do is go to Comixology, just Google Comixology, Steel Versus, and there they are. They're 99 cents a piece. So
It's a dope book too. It's awesome. Art's wonderful.
If you guys would like, guys could just like send me like links, and I'll put them in the description below.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
And then for me, I mean, obviously Durontus. I would really like people to check out the Kickstarter, bit.ly/Durontus Kickstarter. And Durontus is Durontus. It's capital D in Durontus and capital K in Kickstarter. If you Google it, though, it will pop up. We still have, I think, like 14 days left. We are very close to our second stretch goal, which right now, people who have donated and are getting digital copies of the comics are also going to get a monster bestiary, which is like going to be 10 pages of like concept work and stuff of other unpublished monsters, including like little bios and quote classified information on some other critters from Durontus's world. And the next stretch goal that we're like less than 200 away from is all of the process pencils from the book are going to be laid out just like the normal book for people to see with like maybe some like notes and stuff on the side. I am in the process of getting Evo cards from Colossal Kaiju Combat. I got the okay to do those, so those will probably be another stretch goal, and everyone who is getting something mailed to them or whatever will get a special Durontus Colossal Kaiju Combat card. And then I'm trying to think of what our other goal is too. I don't know. There is like an animated short that's hopefully going to come out next week that Chris Scalf is doing for me, based on the poster that we did together.
Nice.
Yeah, it's going to be super cool. It's going to have music and roaring and like there's going to be some voiceover work in it from a buddy of his. I'm going to shit my pants when I see it, pretty much.
I can only imagine like the excitement it must be to see your creation in animation.
Oh my god,
moving.
Dude, like, just he sent. I don't know if I posted it on Facebook, but he sent me a sample of its head, like moving, snapping, and I was like, oh my god, oh my god,
oh my god.
I was at my friend's house. I'm like, look.
And you just mentioned before Colossal Kaiju Combat. So is your character Durontus officially confirmed to be in the game at some point?
Yep. Well, I don't necessarily know how like it works in terms of like the game, but yeah, he's going to be part of what's going on. He's going to be included. He's going to get an Evo card for the next series, and then I got the go ahead to get packets of those to give to people for Kickstarter rewards. So.
Now, I'm not sure, but do you get like royalties whenever if Durontus is used in some other media outlet like Kaiju Combat?
No, I mean, Durontus isn't like a big enough deal for me to have to worry about stuff like that. I mean, and I'm just happy that they want to use him and that he could theoretically fight like Nemesis or something would be pretty dope to me. So, yeah, I messaged the guy Simon Strange and was like, look, I've got a licensed kaiju that I think would be cool for your thing. He has a small following and like of like indie comics guys that would kind of be interested in what you're doing, and I know I want kaiju fans because like again kaiju fans kind of in their corners. I'm like, I want kaiju fans to see my monster because it's a kaiju, so can we cross promote? He's like, oh totally. And he's like, oh, and by the way, I like your art, do you want to do some Evo cards? And I'm like, sure. So I get to draw some Evo cards for him, and so yeah, that turned out really good, better than I ever would have expected, I guess. And then, so yeah, obviously the Durontus Kickstarter, you can find the first comic on Comixology if you just Google it. But, if you donate to the Kickstarter, there's some physical copies left that we will mail out, and there's digital copies for, like, I want to say it's like the $5 donation point. And then I want to pimp Hank Steiner as well, which is Scott and I's other baby, and Hank Steiner is like your universal monster story, and I tell people that it's Dick Tracy meets the Munsters. It's the main character.
That's your character on your profile on Skype right now, right?
Yeah, the jumping yellow dude. Yeah. Basically, he is a monster PI, and he lives in a world where there's far fewer monsters than humans, but they live in kind of this merged world like the Munsters. but monsters are treated really shitty. Like they live in ghettos and humans like treat them bad and they go missing. And like the only one with balls enough to stand up against all this weird human racism and tyranny is Hank Steiner, who ends up, kind of crawling through the seedy underbelly of Tower City to try and figure out what is exactly going on in the monster world.
I'm loving this.
Yeah, it's super dope.
I'm a huge like private investigator, detective, crime, mystery stories, like film noir type of guy. So like this seems like right up my alley.
Oh, dude, it's
you'll dig it then for sure.
Yeah, I think that we're gonna do a Kickstarter for Hank too at some point, just because Kickstarter's been good to us, and everybody who reads Hank, like they love Hank, man. Like everybody just thinks the character's cool, the story's cool, and I mean I love it. Like it's if you like Hellboy or like the Goon or even like the Thing, he's kind of that style of character. Like he's kind of a dour, grim, punchy badass guy.
Voiced by Patrick Warburton.
Yeah.
I can imagine that with looking at the character design.
Definitely.
Yeah, and basically like, there's a lot of things like stabbing vampire hookers and like punching goblins in the face.
Yes.
What else, Scott?
Well, the second issue, which is coming down the pipe soon, we take them to do an homage to Chinatown and sort of how that figures into noir, and take them against the whole triad Yakuzas and all that good stuff.
Oh yeah, there's a dragon at some point. Yeah, and that one will be ready to go soon. That one's all penciled and kind of getting pretty close to finished with that one. Oh yeah,
you can
and
get
Scott,
the first issue on Comixology.
Yeah, first issue is on Comixology, and they're going to be distributed through Source Point Press is going to be publishing and distributing, and they're like a Michigan-based small publisher. They're good guys. And Scott, everybody loves Eve, by the way. Every time that I've shown anybody Eve, they dig her too. I just wanted to say that because like I get just as many compliments and like people talking about how cool Eve is that I do Hank now. So now we've got a couple really like kick-ass characters to run with.
Yeah, that's sweet.
This all sounds very excellent. Now the final question I want to ask you guys before we end this podcast: do either of you have any advice for any up and coming like artists and writers who have
don't
like,
have
dreams? Any dreams and ambitions of getting into the comic
summer,
business?
Man. It's been a rough summer.
It's like finally these brats are going to school.
Oh Jesus! I am so ready. They go back in like 5 days.
Sorry, that was not I did not meant to offend if your children in any sort of way.
No. I mean, nope. I working from home and having kids around is not an easy thing to do. Yeah, I guess major advice would be, and I mean it's going to sound lame, but don't get discouraged because it's very, very easy to get discouraged because there's a lot of talented people out there, and you have to be very, very persistent because when you first start out, you're not going to be the best artist, and you're not going to have the best story, and you're not going to be working on the best book. Your book is not going to be the next big thing, and it's the big problem that every new young comic artist has is their book is going to be the next big thing. Everybody thinks that theirs is going to take off and be the next Hellboy, and it doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. You have to kind of put in your time, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that because you have time to hone your craft. And if you don't give up on yourself, there's a lot out there. I mean, it's, you can make it a living sitting at home in your pajamas watching Gamera movies all day and drawing comics like I did. So...
Yeah, my biggest tip would be there's like a mantra basically for indie comics people, and it's a hashtag and all that. It's just make comics, and like just that says it kind of right there. Like you literally can't make comics until you start making comics. So
it's true. Everybody has a story. Everybody's like, yeah, I've got this idea for a character. I've got this idea for a story. Until you make a comic, you don't have shit, son.
Right, and the thing is that you have to take that character and you have to make them and you have to finish them and you have to develop them to a point to where they're ready to be gone, if that makes any sense. Like, you have to get stuff out so you can get the better stuff in your head. So I think that's the one of the things that I've learned the most is that, like, because everything that you're working on feels like it should be the best like most badass thing you've ever done, but that's just not true. You know,
Well,
it's
yeah.
all about getting to a bar, and you know, you just have to make comics until you get to that bar.
I'm working on 9 comics right now, all from different people. And, like, there's a lot of potential for all of them. But I don't know where they're going to go, and I can't say, hey, buddy, this comic is going to be the one, because I don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody does. You got to do your best, and I'm trying to do my best as an artist for these people, and I know that they're trying to write their best comics, and, you know, but like what Scott says, it's all about just getting it done. Just make comics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much for your words of wisdom, both Scott and Tyler. And thank you again for being able to join this episode of Shuwatch. Again, and thank you to the audience for sitting here for the last, I don't know, like hour and a half or so, 2 hours maybe, just listening to us.
Oh, God. Yeah, I could talk for forever.
Join the club.
Yeah, definitely. So, yes, we have come to the end of another episode of Shuwatch. Thank you all for joining us. And so, I have been Andres Perez, a.k.a. KaijuNoir.
I'm Adam Noyes of Van Productions.
And these two have been Tyler Sowles and Scott Schmidt.
Yeah, that's us.
That's us.
So,
Thanks for having us, guys.
You're absolutely welcome. It is our pleasure to have you here. And if you ever have time, you know, you're free to be on the podcast whenever you guys would like.
Awesome. That'd be
So
sweet.
if there was like, I don't know, like Durontus 3 or something, or, you know, or the Hank Stein, just, you know, if you ever want to promote your stuff, promote your shit, you know, you're free to come on here.
Righteous.
Awesome. Well, we will be back.
Durontus 3, the sequel.
We are here to support you guys all the way. So everybody, be sure to check out their Kickstarter for Durontus 2, and you know, if you don't have the financial opportunity to donate to them, be sure to spread the word. Spread the word.
Share with
spread
friends.
the word of Durontus. Until next time, everybody, take care.